The British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Hello, my name is Lisa Kafton, and in your news update to 2 p.m. BC's party leaders have discussed affordability, carbon pricing, vaccine conspiracy theories, and the overdose crisis in the first and only radio debate ahead of the provincial election in October 19th. NDP leader David Eby says John Rustad has a credibility problem when it comes to public safety because the Conservative leader has indicated he would direct police not to enforce federal laws.
Well, that doesn't make our communities safe. It has nothing to do with hunting. It is all about pandering to a small constituency, which is so small, I think is invisible, in order to, and it makes our communities less safe.
Rustad responded during the debate on Vancouver radio station CKNW by saying Ottawa is targeting law-abiding gun owners and he would direct police to instead follow up criminals and gangs who are source gangs coming into BC. There was some friction between BC's party leaders. Green leader Sonia Furstenau accused BC Conservative leader John Rustad of encouragement, fear, and misinformation, while Rustad said NDP leader David Eby was telling lies about the Conservatives.
I think British Columbia doesn't want a premier who's so easily to lie, and I think that is just bad. I hate using that word, but it's very true.
You think everybody lies.
Talks about
climate scientists,
but I'll tell you this:
Bonnie Henry, vaccine makers.
The Moose Hide campaign, an organization focusing against gender-based violence among Indigenous and non-Indigenous women, has told BC Conservative leader John Rustad to not wear their pin anymore. Our reporter Zach Robko explained the significance of this decision.
John Rustad has donned the Moose Hide pin since 2017, when their campaign began and when Rustad served as the BC Liberal Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. Throughout the 2024 BC election campaign, he has been wearing one. The Moose Hide campaign released a statement saying they are withdrawing our permission for Rustad to wear the pin. Rustad's BC Conservatives have vowed to repeal DRIPA, BC's implementation of Indigenous rights and protections set out by the United Nations. In their statement, the Moose Hide campaign says this is not a decision they take lightly, but need to hold elected leaders to a higher standard. Rustad has not responded to the letter. Zach Robko, BCIT's The Crow.
BCIT students with physical disabilities are finding it difficult to navigate BCIT's Burnaby Campus. Isabella Calisi talks with Accessibility and Wellness at BCIT about what's affecting students the most.
One of the most common complaints from physically disabled students that Joanna Angelides, the Associate Director for Accessibility and Wellbeing, hears about is how difficult it is to get around older buildings on BCIT's Burnaby campus.
What we hear is that the accessible routes are sometimes actually longer than like a regular route, for lack of a better word. Also that the accessible routes are multiple steps. And I mean, I have found that some students, and even for myself, like I've had to actually physically travel them, sometimes with someone to actually really understand the route.
Angelides' department works with campus's planning and facilities management, and she says that they take a great level of care when working on these issues. Isabella Calisi, BCIT's The Crow.
Now Isabella's joining us now. Isabella, what kind of challenges are students facing with getting around campus?
Well, it's just kind of the day-to-day stuff. Like you have like people going to and from classes or trying to go into transit, just trying to go into those different areas. It's kind of difficult due to like the amount of stairs there in the areas. Students have to go kind of in and out of buildings to use elevators or go around buildings completely because there's not like a handicap ramp there for them to use.
What parts of BCIT are difficult for people to navigate?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just notice the amount of stairs, if you go towards where like the Tim Hortons is, over by like the stand just next to the library, and if you look at the amount of stairs that are around there, think about like how hard it would be if you had like a mobility disability with you, and you had to try to get around. So you have to kind of go into one of the buildings, down an elevator, through a hallway, then into that little Zen garden area if you wanted to go there. And though it's possible to get there, those types of things are all over campus. So if you want to get there, it's kind of hard to do that.
Yeah, how is BCIT planning to improve accessibility on campus?
For the most part, it's just general accessibility things. So, like adding in more ramps, adding in more handicap spaces, all that kind of stuff. Even in like their 2023 accessibility plan, they do recognize things like the stairs as their barriers with things. So it's all that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, Isabella. A Surrey-based family lawyer has resigned from his law firm after admitting to decades of sexual harassment. A consent agreement from the Law Society of BC reveals that Stuart Zuckerman admitted to misconduct between 2000 and 2023. It details instances of inappropriate comments, touching, and behavior, including a 2023 incident when a female employee alleged she caught Zuckerman trying to take a video looking up her skirt. Zuckerman will lose his license to practice law in BC at the end of November, and he will not be allowed to apply for reinstatement for at least 5 years. Vancouver area home sales dropped 3.8% last month compared with September 2023, while listings grew to put modest pressure on pricing. The latest figures from Greater Vancouver Realtor says there were 1,852 sales of existing residential homes, 26% below the 10-year average. At the same time, there were more than 6,000 newly listed properties in September, bringing the total number of listings to nearly 15,000, a figure that's 24% above the 10-year seasonal average. The board says the results show recent interest rate cuts haven't led to an expected rebound in activity. The weather phenomenon La Niña is making its way to BC this winter. We'll bring it over to our reporter Filip Kovacevic for the weather-based report.
This winter, La Niña will bring cold weather and more rain, which could lead to flooding. The higher chance of flooding may have poor effects on crops in BC. Lillian Posh, the general manager of Okanagan Grown Products, told us what farmers are doing to prepare for the winter.
Because we're now into harvesting, so like the beets and the carrots and the onions and potatoes, they're busy in the fields right now getting everything out and getting them into storage. And of course, they're always racing against the weather.
This winter could also lead to more power outages due to flooding and storm season. Filip Kovacevic, BCIT's The Crow.
U.S. President Joe Biden is urging Israel to be careful in how it responds to yesterday's Iranian missile attack.
Asked if he'd back an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear sites?
The answer is no.
Saying he and fellow G7 leaders who talked this morning amid fears the region will devolve into all-out war would rather see Israel mount a more proportional response. Whatever it is, UN Ambassador Danny Danone says there will be one.
It will be painful.
Iranian Ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani says the missile strikes were in self-defense after months of Israeli aggression, and gave his own warning.
Iran is fully prepared to take further defensive measures.
As the UN Security Council met in emergency session, Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded for all parties to stand down.
This deadly cycle of tit-for-tat violence must stop.
Sagar Magani, Washington.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says hundreds of Canadians have now left Lebanon on flights secured by the federal government. Melanie Joly says her department made calls yesterday to around 1,000 people who want help getting out of the country, and more than 300 of them secured seats on flight out of Beirut.
We have 654 seats available. So you can see that basically there's still lots of seats that are available to Canadians. So my point to those watching or listening to us is if you're offered a seat, please take it. And I know it's difficult.
About the weather today, it is partly cloudy. The temperature feels like 8 degrees so far, but it will reach 15 later, and it feels such sunny today. The wind speed is relatively calm at 8 kilometers per hour. It is a good idea to wear your jacket in the evening. That's your news update with Lisa Cofton.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Good afternoon. I'm Ethan. Good afternoon. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and here are your sports updates for 2:15. Major League Baseball playoff returns for Day 2 with 4 games. The Detroit Tigers currently lead the Houston Astros 5-2 in the middle of the 9th inning. Listen in as the Tigers take a commanding lead late.
Line down the left field line, it is a fair ball. 1 run scores. 2 runs score. Everybody scores. It's a bases clearing. Big pinch hit for
The Kansas City Royals lead the Baltimore Orioles 1-0 in the bottom of the first as a Vinny Pasquantino ground ball leads to Michael Massey scoring a run.
0 for 3 with a walk yesterday. Ground ball and a base hit. And the Royals jump right out with a 1-0 lead. Pasquantino.
The Milwaukee Brewers look to bounce back in Game 2 of their wild card series against the New York Mets after a strong 5th inning by the Mets gave them the comeback win in Game 1. Frankie Montas is expected to take the mound for the Brewers. Montas posted a 7-11 record this season with a .484 ERA. The Mets turned to Sean Manahe for Game 2. Manahe posted a 12-6 record in the regular season with a .347 ERA, but has yet to record a postseason win. The Atlanta Braves head to San Diego to face the Padres. Fresh off a Game 1 win, the Padres will send Joe Musgrove to the mound. Looking to have a bounce-back game after not recording a single run in Game 1, the Braves will turn to Max Fried in Game 2. Blue Jays manager Ross Atkins will continue in his current role with the team, President Mark Shapiro announced. After the Jays finished last in the American League this season, some speculated the team might be looking to make a change in management. The Jays ended the season with a 74-88 record, despite having the 7th highest payroll in the MLB. RB Leipzig and Juventus are currently tied 2-2. Benjamin Sisko with a 65-minute penalty regained the lead momentarily for Leipzig. A late goal for Juventus has given them the 3-2 lead. Lille lead Real Madrid 1-0 thanks to a Jonathan David go-ahead goal on an extra-time penalty in the first half. A 79th minute goal from John Duran has given Aston Villa a 1-0 lead over Bayern Munich. The Vancouver Whitecaps take on the Seattle Sounders in a Cascadia Cup clash. The Caps look to win back-to-back Cascadia Cups for the first time since 2014. Caps forward Brian White comes into the game 1 goal short of setting a new career high in goals. Canada Soccer has announced the roster for the upcoming international match versus Panama, which will take place in Toronto on October 15th. Notable players on the roster include Whitecaps midfielder Ali Ahmed and defender Sam Adekubi. The match will also mark the 50th international appearance for Canadian star Alphonso Davies. The BC Lions have acquired running back Jeshurun Antwi from the Montreal Alouettes in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick. The 26-year-old from Calgary has recorded 20 rushing yards, along with 21 receiving yards in 15 games this season for the Alouettes. The Abbotsford Canucks have announced their training camp roster. The roster consists of 35 players, including Jonathan Lekaramaki, Kirill Kudryavtsev, and Elias Pettersson. As the NHL preseason comes to a close, many teams have found themselves struggling with injuries to key players. In the latest set of injuries, Ottawa Senators forward Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk and defenseman Thomas Chabot all left last night's game versus the Senators. Halfway through the second period, Montreal Canadiens defenseman Arbor Xhekaj caught forwards Tim Stützle up high as he was passing through the neutral zone. Xhekaj was then jumped by Senators captain Brady Tkachuk. Xhekaj received a 5-minute major and a 10-minute misconduct following the hit. First overall pick in the 2024 NHL Draft, Macklin Celebrini also left last night's San Jose Sharks versus Utah Hockey Club game after falling awkwardly into the boards. Celebrini has been labeled as day-to-day. Vancouver Canucks forward Pius Suter has also been labeled day-to-day as he deals with an upper body injury, according to coach Rick Tocchet. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and those were your sports updates to 2:15.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
As we near the beginning of the NHL regular season, the Boston Bruins are currently without a contract agreement in place with their number one goalie, Jeremy Swayman. This is a huge problem for the team. For context, this offseason, with Swayman in need of a new contract, the Bruins decided to trade away 2023 Vezina Trophy winner Linus Ullmark, all but guaranteeing the reins of starting goalie being passed down to Swayman. Prior to this, Ullmark and Swayman had made up the league's best 1A and 1B combo. However, as we reach less than a week until the start of the NHL season, Swayman remains unsigned, and to put it bluntly, it's due to the incompetence of the Bruins head office. In a recent press conference, Bruins president Cam Neely publicly called out Swayman to the media saying, quote, "Well, I don't want to get into the weeds with what his ask is, but I know that out of 64 million reasons why I'd be playing right now," hinting at a possible 8x8 offer from the Bruins. This comment from Neely led to Swayman's agent Louis Gross publicly defending his client, saying the camp is, quote, "extremely disappointed in the Bruins president's comments." In essentially the span of a single offseason, the Bruins traded away one Vezina-caliber goalie and have almost single-handedly forced another out of the city, as Swayman is rumored to be considering a formal trade request away from the Bruins. If the Bruins end up losing two star goalies in one offseason, heads should certainly roll. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and that has been today's Sports Comment.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Grace Miller. Today, we're going to take a look at National Women's History Month. This year's theme is Women at Work, Economic Growth, Past, Present, and Future. In a statement from Justin Trudeau, he points to the theme acknowledging the progress made by women in business and that there is work necessary to improve workplace equality in Canada. The annual State of Women's Entrepreneurship in Canada report found that 18.4% of all businesses in Canada were female-owned in 2023. Although 2023 had an increase from the 15.6% of women-owned businesses in 2017, there is still a deep disparity between male-owned businesses. One of the many organizations established to support women entrepreneurship is Supporting Women Entrepreneurs, or WeBC. Since 1995, they have seen $2.6 billion in economic activity as a result of their work, provided 86,000 business advisory services, and hosted over 2,600 training sessions for 62,000 plus women. With me today is Melanie Roop, the Senior Director for Loans and Advisory Services at WeBC. She leads a team of client services, business advisory, and loan administration staff, oversees loan portfolios, and cultivates relations with WeBC's lending partners. Welcome, Melanie. Thank you so much for being on air with me today.
Well, thank you so much, Grace. That just brings tears to my eyes when I listen to those stats you've listed off. It's amazing.
And I know that you've had a long history in the business industry aside from WeBC. Before our interview, I took a look at your bio on the WeBC website, and you mentioned your commitment to breaking down barriers for women in business. What barriers do you see for women in business today?
Oh, that's a great question. WeBC is celebrating their 30th anniversary next year in January, and it was intended to be a 4 or 5 year project to support women to access capital and access resources. And yet here we are 30 years later, and there are as many barriers to accessing capital and resources for women and other underrepresented groups that there's still high demand for WeBC services around the province and across Canada.
You've mentioned that funding is a common issue that you've seen, and of course you would, as being the Director of Loans and Advisory Services. However, you also mentioned all sorts of different barriers that women are facing. Can you tell me a bit about some of the other examples of struggles that women face while trying to start a business?
Sure. A big one is networks and role models. So we find that women don't have the networks. They also don't have the role models. So someone like Tara Bosch, who has created this successful company, Smart Suites, and been so successful with it, she becomes a role model that other women can see, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And there's many, many more examples of women who are starting and building successful businesses. That's what we want to amplify, is sharing their stories so that women can see that there is a pathway to success through entrepreneurship. And then networks. So women don't necessarily, have a network of professionals who can provide accounting and legal services, or even people who have had experience, say, taking their product and selling it outside of British Columbia or outside of Canada. And so through the community of WeBC and the greater ecosystem that exists for entrepreneurs in BC, WeBC can help connect them to a network of organizations and individuals that can help them with the expertise that they need in order to take their business to the next level. That's really important. That's really barriers that women face, and so being able to fill those gaps is a critical part of the work that WeBC does.
It's interesting that you mentioned education as part of that, a lack of knowledge of loans and resources, seeing as many systematic struggles of inequality may contribute to needing organizations like yours to support women in business. What are the primary examples of intersectionality discrimination against women that you see within your work that might help bring about more equality within the business sector?
I think I would focus on the unconscious bias that exists everywhere, and it limits women in what they're able to do, as well as other underrepresented groups, to be able to access capital and resources. And it exists that you can't control it. So I think about somebody approached us once and said, "Oh, can you work with this woman entrepreneur? She seems a bit scattered." And that, women have a lot of different roles that they play. It wasn't that she was scattered, it was she couldn't respond in exactly the time frame that might be expected of a male, because she has all these other roles and responsibilities. But if you tell her what to do, she'll work early in the morning or late in the evening when those responsibilities are cleared off her plate to get the work done. And so that's kind of the unconscious bias where maybe other lenders don't perceive, and it's not so much the organization, it's more the individuals that they connect with, that there's this unconscious bias out there that prevents them getting access to the resources that they need. So we really need women to have access to the resources where they are supported, where, that unconscious bias doesn't persist, and they can get what they need.
That kind of leads me to my next question as well, about your experience as a former commercial lender affecting your perspective in the work that you do now. What's it like to be on the flip side of that work and now advising women who are going to commercial lenders?
Well, I would say for sure that I can understand the financial institution's perspective. I worked in risk management for a time and with the regulators, and our banking industry in Canada is heavily regulated, which on the one hand is positive because we don't experience the swings in the financial system that they saw in the U.S. during the financial crisis. So that's a positive. But on the flip side, it's very conservative and excludes women and other underrepresented groups that don't necessarily meet their criteria. So I work with my team and with the organization here to try and be more flexible and be less traditional lender-like and supporting women when they need access to capital. But it also has a very high focus on viability, and that means looking at their business plan to see that they can demonstrate viability. Because if they take out debt and then the business is unable to repay the debt, it can really damage the financial position of a woman if she has to claim bankruptcy or consumer protection.
It seems like BC has met every gap that I could personally think of. Are there any gaps in aid that you think could be built on to help women continue to build toward equality in the business industry?
I think that the gaps are, things are always changing. Certainly after the pandemic, we found that the needs of women entrepreneurs, they needed a lot more support in planning for emergencies, for resilience, training and support on just being able to get through those challenges. And BC is constantly evolving and listening to what our clients need and developing new programs. So, if anybody's listening and interested, I encourage them to look on our website and sign up for our newsletters to stay in touch with, the developments as we continue to evolve to support the needs of women entrepreneurs.
And what an amazing path that you guys will be on. Definitely one worth taking a look at. That was Melanie Rube, the Senior Director for Loans and Advisory Services at BC. Thank you for listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Grace Miller, for BCIT's The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika King. Thank you for tuning